All right. Good evening, everyone. And by everyone, I don't know who I mean because we'll see who joins us. All right. We are live. Let's go ahead and let Twitter know that we're live. Make sure everybody knows that that is happening while we're waiting on some people to show up. Gonna have some live AP Euro review. All right. And whoever these first two viewers are, thank y'all so much. All right. So going live. 55 viewers, two viewers turned to 55 really quick. Let's see. So from AP Euro review. Okay, let's see. Letting Twitter know we're live. Okay, so littletomrichey.net/hangouts. All right, good deal, good deal. All right, so we've got that. 134. Wow, that's a lot of people. Okay, so we are going live for Euro review right now, and my friend Paul Sargent's going to be joining me. All right, so let's see. Okay, letting everybody know we're here. Paul saw 148 people. Wow. Okay, we got a lot of people. Okay, let's see. Let me see what I can do here. Let's see. Let me just send something real quick to my friend Paul Sargent. Okay, let me see. Let me get all this out there. Let me get on Twitter real quick. We will begin very, very shortly. Very shortly. Want to make sure that our friend Paul Sargent has all the information that he needs. All right, so go ahead. Okay. Just send it again via email and via Twitter direct message. All right, so there we go. All right, so I've let Paul know how to get here. All right, and so questions on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen, at Tom Richey. I'm about to start checking Twitter and see what the questions are. Oh, wow, that's a lot of people, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, looks like Paul's here, ladies and gentlemen. So Paul Sargent is going to be joining us tonight. Hopefully y'all are familiar with Paul's YouTube channel. If you are not, you should be. Paul, let's if you want to go ahead and welcome our 197 viewers to the broadcast.
Wow, 197. That's a pretty impressive number. Yeah, welcome. My name's Paul Sargent. I do AP Euro videos just like Tom here. A little less well known than Tom, but I'm working my way up, I think. But yeah, so we're here to answer some questions and try and help get people ready for some midterms, I guess. So yeah.
Okay, well, great to have Paul here, ladies and gentlemen. And all right, y'all got us above 200. Thank y'all so much for your support, everyone. And remember, as you're preparing for midterms, I can't think of anything better to help you prepare than my app. All right, if you've got an iPhone, this is coming to hopefully Android sometime in the spring. Romulus Euro, over 600 questions to help you review for your test. Just a little trivia app that I made. It's available at the App Store. You can browse by topic. You can also go straight to midterm review, which will mix up questions on the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Age of Absolutism, science, Enlightenment, the French Revolution. So that'll give you about 300 content-oriented little rapid-fire questions to help you to get ready for your exam. All right, so lots of stuff here for you. Romulus Euro at the App Store. It would make me so happy if you bought it, and if you can buy it and screenshot it, retweet it, I'll retweet it. Okay, I'm very excited about this app. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, and don't forget about the premium hangout that's going to be at 8:30 Eastern. We're going to be live for an hour. This is going to be free. Now, one thing you'll notice, there are going to be a lot of questions, a lot of stuff's not going to get answered. So I want to make sure that I'm also here for the people who are really under the gun and need to get their questions answered. All right. So, as far as we can make sure of that. So I'm going to start going through the questions. I'll try to answer some, and then, I will hand some to Paul and all of that kind of stuff. We'll sort of tag team this. All right. Zoe, so glad. All right. Charlotte was one of the first two. Excellent. And Zoe, it was perfect. All right. So I timed it perfectly. Awesome. Awesome. So glad to hear that this was perfectly timed. All right. So let's see what we're gonna see as far as questions. All right. Let's see all of the memes from Miss Beller's AP Euro class. Very good. Very good. Annie at Henry Clay High School. I love me some Henry Clay High School. So excellent. Excellent. Okay. And so as far as that goes, just send me questions via Twitter and let's see where we are. I don't have any questions yet. All right. At Tom Richey. So just let me know all of that kind of stuff here. All right. So we've got a little thing that I'm retweeting. I told this Louis the 14th class that I'd retweet that. All right. Passing AP Euro. Thanks, Mike. All right. Let's have the questions, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have the questions. All right, which I do appreciate the promotion and y'all letting all your friends and all that. Can I review the French Revolution and the social characteristics like marriage and diet in 18th century Europe? Annika, who is, Annika, who I recognize constantly engaging me on Twitter and all of that. Annika, be glad to. All right, so the 18th century. Now, of course, we're not going to do the whole French Revolution. All right, now I've got a video I've got several videos on the French Revolution. So, maybe we can go over some key points or something like that. Paul, you want to set up the 18th century, these patterns that she's asking about, following, of marriage, diet, all of these things that are going on in the 18th century, kind of leading up to the French Revolution?
Well, it's funny that you phrase it that way, because generally in Europe and to some extent in France, you have this sort of improvement in lifestyle. There are more foods available thanks to the Columbian exchange, the potato, corn, tomatoes, turkey. All of these great things are coming along. So there's a greater food supply, and you also have the very beginnings of the agricultural revolution, where they're able to produce more food. So there is more food going on. However, ironically, the French Revolution largely starts because of a food shortage. So that's why I say it's a bit of a tricky question. But a lot of the patterns are changing, because the 18th century sees this sort of movement of people. Many people are moving away from the farms. They're moving towards the cities, especially in places like England, and so the people are putting off having children. People are putting off getting married. They're looking for more of a private lifestyle than they used to. It's not the old let's live with the extended family in our little one-room cottage in the middle of nowhere. And they're moving towards, people wanting to be financially stable and then getting married, so that then they can go out and move on their own and live their own lifestyle. Plus, you have the decrease of disease, thanks to innovations in medicine, including the very, very, very beginnings of inoculation. Those of you who've gotten your flu shots, you get the idea here. Give everybody a little bit of the disease and then let the body develop immunities. So all of these things are affecting the social order. But when it comes to the French Revolution, there is a shortage of bread, really, that's getting to the lower class in especially Paris. And that really sparks off the French Revolution. And largely it's because of the state of the French finances. Even though the economy is growing, well, so is the appetite at Versailles. And a lot of money is being spent on that, and a lot of resources are being spent on that. So I think that covers most of it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and of course you've got the populate now. Of course, food's going up, but there's also a population explosion in the 18th century. If you take a look at my video on the British Agricultural Revolution, I talk about how the population is is rising because of all of these new agricultural techniques. That there are, I mean, there's a lot more food and stuff, but there are also more mouths to feed as a result of this. So that's another thing that that needs to be considered there. Now, my friend Isaac Erickson from Quartz Hill, California. I think I've got a lot of friends in at QHHS, Quartz Hill, I guess what it's called over there. And so Isaac is asking, what is the big idea of this first semester? Like, how exactly did all the events lead to now, and what were the most important events? All right, now Isaac, going straight for the big questions. All right, now let me show you something I've put together on my website. If you go to tomrichey.net and you go to courses, AP European History, I've got a page here, AP Euro midterm review. All right, so midterm review. And what I've done here is I've given a link to my playlist. Of course, on some of these questions, I'm referring y'all to videos that I've made here. I've got something here that what I call pick six. If you don't have time to watch 83 videos, I've picked 6 of the more important, videos, some of the most successful there that I'm thinking, okay, take a look at these. The question that we just got from Annika, the French Revolution Part 1, the old regime. I go into some of those things there. Of course, Peter the Great. Romulus Euro, I was just talking about my app, something that y'all might want to get a hold of. Now, what you see here, I've got a few things here, some handouts and strategy guides. One of them is called Europe Then, Europe Now. And what I've done here is I've gotten a bunch of comparisons between Europe in 1450, Europe in 1815, and Europe in, 2015, as it was when I was making this. So, I'm going over the 3 orders versus, in 1815, the traditional orders are being challenged to varying degrees. Okay, so really, by the time you get to the halfway point of the course, you're in about 1815, and you can kind of see what's going on there. So I would refer you to this document. Now, you might even be able to put in Richey, Europe Then, Europe Now onto Google, and of course that's what comes up. Of course, you could also just go to my website, but this is something that I think would be very useful. Now, also remember that Paul Sargent is joining us, and just a quick little note on how to get to his channel. Just Paul Sargent, just like you'd come in, come across in the military or something like that, and go ahead and subscribe. Paul Sargent's got a lot of videos, some on topics that, I haven't done, some on topics that, he's done it in a different way than I have. So I think that it's definitely good to get as many good sources there. Paul is teaching in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Paul and I have both been to Amsterdam in the past 2 years. So just a little bit of trivia. Different times. So as far as that goes, I would say that is the best thing. That's going to be the best resource to just kind of see what is it exactly that's changing, and what are some of the big ideas that they want to know at QHHS. And speaking of QHHS, is that your school, WowX Gen? I think that y'all are all going to the same school, but just want to make sure. But just in case, I think y'all are the same school. So shout out to Jen as well. Big fan. All right, so let's see. Brandon, at what points this semester did women's rights improve? Now, one thing I always tell my students about the Renaissance was sexist. Okay, make sure y'all know, if nothing else, like the Renaissance was sexist. Humanism, not womanism. All of the basically, it's the writers are men. One thing somebody was asking me about the vernacular in Latin, and one thing is that during the Renaissance, if you were getting this humanistic education, you were learning how to write Latin, and only men would learn this. And so what would happen here is that when men wrote epic poetry, like when Petrarch wrote his epic poem Africa, which was about Scipio Africanus, you know, a classical, you know, epic poem about this Roman hero, he wrote that in Latin. But when Petrarch wrote his Canzoniere, the set of, you know, sonnets and other poems to Laura that were love poems, basically, he wrote those in the vernacular. Why? Because women weren't educated in classical languages. And so only men were really receiving this humanistic education. Now, of course, there were some women that were involved in the scientific revolution. They couldn't necessarily get into the universities or anything like that. But, you know, Voltaire had a mistress, Emily du Châtelet, who was brilliant. She had to explain Newton to him because he was a man of letters. He didn't understand. This is a great book, by the way. I read this a few years ago, and this is actually one of the books on the shelf that I actually have read. You know, Passionate Minds, and it talks about Voltaire's relationship with Emily du Châtelet. And, you know, I mean, it's like Voltaire didn't understand Newton, and, you know, she explained Newton to him well enough so that he could explain Newton to other people. And so that's something as far as, you know, I mean, this is somebody, I mean, Voltaire said that she was a great man whose only fault in life was being born a woman. Really an acknowledgement of how talented she was, you know, in terms of that. I would say that the French Revolution is probably the beginning of what we would call a feminist movement. You know, that before the French Revolution, you don't really have much in terms of a feminist movement. I've got a whole video series on that called Women and the French Revolution. I did it a couple spring breaks ago, and I highly recommend it. It's several lectures that are more about an hour long all total. But if you really want the long version there, you know, there's one, but they're divided in things. Like there's one focusing on Marie Antoinette, another one on Charlotte Corday, Olympe de Gouges, and what Mary Wollstonecraft are two of the earliest feminists that come up during the French Revolution. Of course, there are times during the Reign of Terror where a woman can sue for divorce. You know, they actually, during the Reign of Terror, they have a short period of divorce equality for men and women. Of course, Napoleon rolls that back with his Napoleonic Code that tends to be more conservative and focused on reviving the family. There's a book on my shelf that I still need to read. Just ordered that not too long ago. So hopefully, you know, there will be a Napoleon lecture at some point in the future. All right, so let's see what we've got going on there. All right, Paul, let's see what we've got here. Karina has got a question kind of on, you know, how to analyze pictures. How is it that you would recommend, like when somebody gets one of these, whether it's on a DBQ or whether it's on a stimulus item, how does somebody go about analyzing pictures on the exam?
Well, I think the biggest mistake that students tend to make is they tend to sit there and look at the picture and try and pick out every single piece of information they can possibly find to start off with. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think the best thing to do is to start off by looking at the actual question. What is it that you're being asked about the picture? And then look at the picture and look for what it is you're being asked about. If you're being asked, is this an example of a typical, I'm trying to think of a good example here. If you showed a picture, a Michelangelo painting, and you're asked, you know, what period this is from, that's not going to be a question, but I'm having a hard time coming up with a question here. Then you look at the picture and you start looking and thinking about, you know, what sort of characteristics do I see here, or what sort of indicators do I see that could give me an idea of what it is? And look at the choices that they give you. You know, we haven't done that yet this year, but if Impressionism is one of the choices, and if Surrealism is one of the choices, and it's a Michelangelo painting, you're going to very easily knock those out if you know what those are. Whereas you could spend a lot of time looking at the painting and sort of, you know, trying to analyze what people are doing and what the style is and what the time period is and all of that. And then the other thing I would say is this. Most of the time, if you have a pretty good idea of your artistic movements in terms of where they fall in time, Underneath every picture stimulus will be some sort of a citation, which will tell you the year of the painting or the picture or the political cartoon or whatever it is, which will help you put it into perspective. So in my example, if it says, this is done by Michelangelo, and one of the answers has something to do with the 19th or 20th century, you're way off. So so look at all the information that's given to you, but look at the question first so you know what you're looking for.
Let's see, Paul, do you want to answer Lauren's question while you're there? You had something that Lauren asked you on Twitter about Renaissance Italy as far as the political and economic environment of 15th century Italy.
Okay. Very simply, what you're looking at politically, Italy is unique in the 15th century, and that's it, in that it's alternatively a number of independent city states, which is, it's not unifying in the ways that the centralized monarchies do. Those new monarchies that we talk about, that are happening in Spain, in Portugal, in France, in England, they're centralized and they're pulling in all of the different provinces and making one nation state. Italy resists that, and all of the different cities form their own identity and their own nation state. So politically, it's very, very, very divided, which is a problem that Machiavelli noticed, that we're going to have a real problem here if these big, strong nations are pulling together into one and we're all divided up. We need some sort of strong leader to come in. And then, of course, Machiavelli talks about his ideas of what that means. It does then get alternatively taken over by France, Spain, Austria, and various other people at various times. But during the 15th century, largely what you're looking for is something. You're looking at a very divided country. Well, it's not even a country. A bunch of city states which are being sort of ruled on their own. Economically, it's also very divided, but it's also very wealthy, because in the 15th century, up until the time when the Ottomans take over the Mediterranean, and then these Atlantic states are forced to kind of look outward as another way of trade, all of the trade's happening in the Mediterranean. And that means that the Italians have a grasp on the trade. And because the city-states are not as drawn in by the aristocratic ideals, I guess, of the rest of Europe, because there's less of a hierarchy of aristocracy and more of a merchant class that's really running things. You have a lot of very wealthy families that grow up, and they use their wealth in order to create influence within those city states, and in cases take them over. The great example is the Medici, who not only are able to take over Florence and get thrown out and then take it over again, but they also are able to become so wealthy and influential that they even get a Medici named as Pope, which is almost unheard of outside of if the papacy was located somewhere else, like, it wouldn't happen, because it would be someone from the nobility. So that's kind of where Italy is in the 15th century.
All right, so we've got a few things here. Let's see. Blake Shepard from Boys Latin School in Maryland. All right, and I think I kind of went over your question already, but I wanted to give a shout out, especially since we're talking about humanism. Somebody going to Latin school, keep that up. I shouldn't have a problem understanding humanism. Now, Charlotte has got an excellent question here. Charlotte is asking, can you go over the most important Enlightenment philosophers? All right, now, as far as that goes, it's really kind of, what is important in the sense, okay? Because when it comes down to it, you've got, on the European history exam, they say that, okay, the most important are Voltaire and Rousseau. Now, I would say that Voltaire would definitely be the most important. Now, of course, it's important that you understand, the values of the Enlightenment, such as, rational, scientific thinking. Okay, you might want to check out my video on deism, this religion of the Enlightenment, where, yes, somebody could rationally come to the conclusion that there is a God, a benevolent God, without the help of a sacred text. Now, as far as the Enlightenment is concerned, typically the idea of having a text that is handed down from a select group of people who had a revelation from God that he didn't choose to show everybody in nature. That's a little far-fetched. I mean, as far as Voltaire is concerned. So Voltaire was very much a critic of Christianity, especially the Catholic Church, but really any revealed religion. My students and I are reading Candide right now, and there is a part where there are Muslim pirates who are committing all kinds of atrocities, but Voltaire notes that they never miss the opportunity to bow down and pray 5 times a day, that they never miss the opportunity to pray. And so for Voltaire, which really for Voltaire, his emphasis on free expression and freedom of religion, religious toleration, very, very important there. And, as far as that is concerned, when he thinks about religion, I've got another video on Voltaire and religion. If you want to look at that, that's on the playlist. And, Voltaire thinks the best thing religion has to offer is that religion at its best encourages us to treat people better. And so that's something that, Christianity, when you look at the teachings of Jesus Christ, when you look at the Gospels, there's really not a whole lot of religious doctrine per se. And so Voltaire, while he wouldn't recognize Jesus as the Son of God or, as a divine being, as somebody who rose from the dead, because empiricism, he's never seen anybody rise from the dead. Why should he believe somebody rose from the dead just because they said it? Okay, it's kind of like my daughter. She's 6 years old. We do this Elf on the Shelf thing, and it's like, it's adorable. But, it's like she really believes that the elf speaks and only my wife and I can hear it. And, even though she can't hear, she's like, what did Frank say? And we tell her what Frank said. And it's just like, what? I mean, this is the state of nonage that Kant talked about, that you're basically letting other people do your thinking for you, and you're taking things as they're given to you. Whereas the philosophers demand evidence. So for Voltaire, it is about evidence. It is about the freedom to seek evidence, the freedom to live a free, rational, and scientific life. Okay, so for one thing, you want to know who these people are, but you also want to know what is it that their contributions are, what is it that's important. So when you think about rationality, freedom, science, looking forward, progression, not being tied down to tradition, a lot of these values of the Enlightenment. So as far as that goes, Paul, what would be a philosopher or two that you would want to draw special attention to?
Well, I always look at the curriculum outline these days that the College Board puts out, just to sort of like focus on the ones that they think are big. Voltaire obviously is big. Diderot, they hold out as someone that people need to know. And here's a person who sort of his big accomplishment in life was to pull together all of these ideas of the Enlightenment and put them into his encyclopedia, basically all of human knowledge through a rational and reasoned sort of lens. And that's that's his big contribution. And I should say, and this is one thing that I think they're really going to want you to know, is that the Enlightenment is really an outgrowth of the scientific revolution. Newton went through and like in his big sort of pull together of the scientific revolution, his culmination of it all. The idea is that there's an order to the universe, and that the only way, like everything is measurable, everything is predictable, everything works according to certain rules, and those, if we can discover them, then we can understand everything better. And so the Enlightenment kind of takes that idea and says, if we can understand rationally why people do or why societies do what they do, then we can sort of create this, we can fix what's wrong and create sort of this perfect society. So Voltaire and Diderot are big. Locke and Rousseau, especially their idea of natural rights, the idea of a social contract, Rousseau's idea of the general will, meaning that people or the government should really be governed by majority rule, that what most people want is what it should have. He had another side to it, which said that, those who don't agree kind of just have to deal with the fact that that's what the general will of the people is. That's what the general will is. But it shouldn't be governed necessarily by, just a king sitting on a throne whimsically making decisions. And that's that rational side of it, and everything's trying to be worked through human reason. But those are the only ones that the College Board really lays out. They give a couple of other examples that could be used. And so, I'll highlight a couple. Montesquieu, the Baron de Montesquieu, writes about the separation of powers in a government, that there should be a separate judicial, legislative, and executive branch. I don't know if this is sounding familiar to anyone who's paid any attention to American government, but the ideas were out there around the time that the founding fathers were sitting around in Philadelphia sweating all summer. But yeah, Montesquieu is in there. Mary Wollstonecraft is one that you should know in terms of her advocacy for women's equality and women's rights. I think that pretty much covers the Enlightenment thinkers that are important these days in the course.
And I think it's also important to note, Adam Smith, as far as, Adam Smith kind of pops up in different contexts. Of course, he is, against Colbert and the mercantilism, that basically Adam Smith says that we should have free trade, that it would really be better because, see, now Adam Smith is questioning a lot of the economic wisdom at the time, that, mercantilism, which I've got a great video on. Mercantilism is this system where the government, it's almost like, okay, we're on teams, and what is valuable? Gold is valuable. Gold's valuable. Silver's valuable. We need to get as much gold and silver as we can. And so they get as much gold and silver as we can. We think, well, there's a finite amount of gold and silver. So we need to make sure that we don't, import too much. We need to export so we can get more gold and silver. And they think in terms of a zero-sum game. And the more we regulate the economy and the more we regulate trade, then the better off we're going to be. It's almost like, imagine a team without a coach. Paul coaches track, and it's like when you don't have a coach, the team's going to fall apart. And so conventional wisdom would say, well, when it comes to the economy, wouldn't it be nice if there's a coach for the team? There should be a coach. Team should have a coach. And Adam Smith's like, well, actually, in this case, not really. And it may seem counterintuitive, but then again, when you think about the Enlightenment, it's about empiricism. And, Adam Smith's like, well, look, we have to accept the fact that people are selfish. Like, human experience tells us that people look out primarily for themselves. And, that's not really a bad thing. We've developed this. This is something that's kind of bred into us. And the thing is, if you just leave everyone to their own devices, the invisible hand of self-interest. See, you see my hand? Now you don't. It's invisible. You see the hand? Nope. All right. So the thing is that if you just leave people to themselves, they will make the best decision for themselves when it comes to the economy. Like, when something's needed, somebody's going to provide it. Imagine if Paul and I weren't making these videos, that, these videos wouldn't be out there. Well, somebody else would do it. When I started, 4 years ago, I'm primarily, I always saw myself as primarily a U.S. history teacher, but, I got on to YouTube and I realized, we really could, there are a lot of U.S. history videos, and maybe I should do some more European history videos. Nobody had to tell me that. It's just, and people started watching them because, there was, not as much out there in that subject. And so when it comes down to it, people will advocate for themselves. Like right now, I mean, it's just like it does me good for my channel, for people to watch my channel, and it does you good to watch my channel. And so this transaction is a mutually beneficial exchange. There was some person wanted to talk, talk smack on Instagram because, I'm doing a premium session later and asking for $5. Like somebody's like, oh my goodness, like $5. And the thing is, what you're seeing now is I've got so much stuff coming in on Twitter that I can't answer everyone's questions. So when you look at something like that, it's like, okay, so if somebody's willing to pay $5, they can come into a smaller session where I'm able to answer everyone's question. So, I get a little bit of money. You get your question answered. And so the thing is, and remember for the premium session, if you're with a group, go ahead and buy in. If you've got a friend you want to send the link to after you buy it, I don't care. Okay. It's just one of those things that, I get a little bit for my time and we get a smaller group and you get your questions answered. But the thing is, that's one of those things that it's a totally voluntary transaction and everybody benefits from the transaction. And, that's what Adam Smith is applying, these enlightened principles that let's look at things how they are, not as they should be. Wealth of Nations is not a book that's like utopia. Let's talk about something that, should be. Adam Smith saying this is essentially what is. And so that's the other side of this. And, when you think about Montesquieu, if you want to tie this to Montesquieu, whom Paul mentioned, when Montesquieu talks about the separation of powers and checks and balances, Montesquieu takes for granted that people are corrupt, that people crave power. And so we need to do things in order to make sure that none of those people gets in a position of supreme authority, that they get in a position where they can do anything they want, that they need someone to limit them. And why do people limit power? Because people are jealous. And so just like Adam Smith's economic system, Montesquieu's system of government takes advantage of human selfishness and human jealousy, and it creates an institutional structure where those things can work, in a scientific way. So it's just like, Paul was saying, like, not just somebody, hereditary or whatever, or letting somebody be a king, but let's think about this in a scientific way. So, Montesquieu is, one of the big names in political science as a result. Brenna, I would say that the 7 Years' War is not something I really see come up on the Euro exam. Now, the French and Indian War, the North American theater is a big deal for APUSH. Paul, would you agree with that assessment?
I would totally agree with it. I think the only thing that you need to know about with the 7 Years' War is the Peace of Westphalia. I'm sorry. Boy, I just did a whole break there. No, I don't think the 7 Years' War is going to come up at all, other than just sort of a larger context of the conflict between Britain and France in the 18th century. It can be used as an example of that, a very good example of it. But no, I don't think that it's important to know a whole lot about the actual war, or I don't even think even the outcome would be an important thing to know.
Yeah, and much more critical for U.S. history. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind that unless you're using a book that's written specifically for the exam, I did a hangout last month with Chris Freiler, who's recently published the AP Achiever text, which right now at Amazon is temporarily out of stock. People are just snatching this up as fast as they can get it. But, as far as a prep book's concerned, I'd look at that. Chris Freiler, when he writes this book, he's writing for the exam. If you're using just a regular garden variety college textbook, it's not being written for the exam. And, there could be some problems there because sometimes you might focus on the wrong things. Now, Lapita, you were asking me about, should you be focusing on the Napoleonic Wars? Now, you should focus on the legacy of the Napoleonic Wars, and some of the things like Napoleon's continental system could come up. So, as a consequence, while the Napoleonic Wars are going on, Napoleon is, basically, trying to create this continental system where, you have an internal economy in Europe that doesn't trade with Britain. Now, on the other side, Britain is blockading they are blockading the ports on the continent. Now, you know, Napoleon's invasion of Russia and his subsequent undoing, but I would focus on the consequences of these things. Now, I think it's kind of, in a lot of ways, unfortunate that military history is not more emphasized on AP exams, but, you know, you're not really, you know, I mean, knowing that he lost at Waterloo, I think is good, but it's going to be more important to look at the consequences, like the Congress of Vienna, and all of that. So I would focus more on Napoleon's, you know, political reforms, such as the Concordat of 1801 with the Catholic Church, his Napoleonic Code, which for the first time created a truly national law code for France. So, you know, but beyond the basics of the Napoleonic Wars, I just wouldn't get too much into, you know, his victory at Austerlitz or anything like that. Paul, do you have any commentary on Napoleon that you'd add there?
The only thing that I'm seeing here as I look at this is, you know, it does reference Napoleon's new military tactics, allowing him to exert control over much of the European continent. So I think when you're talking about the Napoleonic Wars, you do need to understand that, like, here's a guy who's going out and he's sort of revolutionizing war. He's winning battles he shouldn't win, and then he's sort of taking over these countries and putting his whole family and his extended family on the throne of all of these countries. I would also find it important to understand that his reorganization of the former Holy Roman Empire, or the German states, or whatever we want to call them, into sort of a confederation, because it sets the stage for so much more that's going to happen in the 19th century. When he does that, he actually gives the Germanic peoples this sense of nationality, that they're united. They're not sort of divided like the Italian city-states I was talking about earlier. And they're also united not just as a people, but also united against a common enemy who happens to be French. And I don't know how much you guys know, so this might be too much foreshadowing, but the French and the Germans are going to have some issues in the 19th and 20th centuries. They're gonna not like each other for a very, very long time. They're going to do some very nasty things to one another. But this kind of sets the stage for all of that. And then, you know, I think it's always good to know that you know, the ultimate sort of like extent of Napoleon's reign or empire ends with his defeat at Russia. And then that's obviously not the end, but that's sort of the beginning of the end. And he gets pushed out of Russia, and then everyone just swarms on top of him, and he eventually gets defeated. And then he comes back and gets defeated again. But the idea behind this is, like, understand the size and the scope of his conquest and the ideals that he took with him. Because as he conquered Europe, he took the French revolutionary ideals and the ideals of his law code, and sort of spread them around Europe, and again planted seeds for things that are going to dominate all of 19th and 20th century European history.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let me show you a couple things here just to make sure, if you want to stay in touch with me, especially as we get closer to the exam, I would definitely recommend signing up for my AP Euro email list, because anytime I'm doing any kind of broadcasting or anything like that, I'm going to send something to the email list. So make sure with that, and I'll probably even be doing some broadcast here and there just for people on the email list, where there are things that I send you that I don't send other people. Also, if you want to join us later for the VIP Hangout, you know, go ahead and, or the, so you can either, there are 2 levels of signing in there that you can read about there. So just, keep in mind, be sure, if you want to stay in touch with me, you sign up for the email list. That is the best way to stay in touch. Randy Weiss is asking me about prep books. The only prep book right now that I, recommend is the Chris Freiler AP Achiever prep book. Others I haven't reviewed, and they may be good. But the thing is, when you think about point of view analysis, that Chris Freiler has been assistant chief reader. He's been a question leader. He's been on the test development committee. He was on the committee that did the AP Euro redesign. resigned. That was part of the reason why he had to wait a certain amount of time before he could publish the book, which has just hit the shelves in the past couple months. That, you know, basically, this is one of the guys that wrote the test, and there was some kind of statute of limitations on that. So, you know, that one, I just think, like, with all that you have there, with all of the experience that Chris brings to the table, you know, I would be hard pressed to find somebody who is publishing something that has more experience with the exam than Chris Freiler. And also, this thing's very well written as well. So I think that's something that's important. There could be some other good prep books out there. Now, speaking of POV, my friend Alexandra sent me a message on Twitter. She said, "Hi, Tom Richey. I'm a junior, so I'm taking A push now. But tell these AP Euro nerds that I got a 5 last year, partly thanks to your videos." All right. So she wants people to know, like, look, I watched your videos and you know, I got a 5. So she just wanted me to pass that along to you. That's not me talking. You know, the POV is somebody who made a 5. So you know it's good. All right. So make sure, you know, when you look at any documents in life, on the exam, whatever, that you do that. All right. So, all right. I'm hearing from Richmond, Kentucky, Lucas Myers. Okay. Mr. Ben Osborne's class, one of my favorite groups of people here. Be sure to tell my friends hello over there, especially my friend Evan Williams. There's a guy this high school in Kentucky, and there's a kid in the class that's actually named Evan Williams. So they have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, definitely say Evan Williams. Evan Williams. Now, so as far as that, Brenna. Okay, well, good. I'm glad that I said that right. Okay, well, good. Can I maybe go over the scientific revolution? Oh, goodness. And your name is Comic Sans, and you don't follow me. Like, what in the world? Who is this person? All right. What was the primary? I've got a lot of videos on the scientific revolution. So does Paul. I think this is a topic that both Paul and I have covered pretty thoroughly in videos. So I would say if you're looking for the scientific revolution, just type in AP Euro scientific revolution, and you're going to find videos by me and Paul that are going to be very helpful to you. As far as that goes, can you explain how the Enlightenment affected the ideals of the French Revolution? Now, what you have to remember is with the French Revolution, it's just sometimes it's hard to kind of see what are the ideals of the French Revolution. But when you think in terms of rationality, it's like this idea of the 3 estates. All right. The idea of the 3 estates, that there are nobles that should get like privileges just because of their family. You know, that's stupid. All right. That has no basis in rationality. So with the Enlightenment, it's like, look, you know, it shouldn't matter what family you come from. What really matters is how much money you have. I mean, that's really, I mean, if you think about America, you know, Paul made a reference to America as really like, I mean, our founding is pretty much just a direct consequence of the Enlightenment. And when you look at the United States, it's like, you know, doesn't matter where you come from. It matters, you know, how much money you have. So, you know, which, you know, yeah, one of the richest people in the country is about to take the oath of office as president of the United States. And so the thing is, I would say that when you look at the bourgeoisie, now the bourgeoisie, a lot of times, you know, people say this is the French middle class, but I like to clarify professional class. You know, these are the white collar people. Okay. These are the white collar workers, people that tended to, you know, lawyers, merchants, physicians, people who were pretty well off. And a lot of these people actually had more money than the nobles, who actually, you know, the nobles had more political influence and political clout. And a lot of these people were kind of bitter about that because they're like, look, I have more money than these people. I'm better educated than these people. I'm smarter than these people. And, you know, that's the Enlightenment. You know, you think about, you know, Voltaire and all of these enlightened philosophers. So for one thing, the revolt against the idea of hereditary nobility. Also, the France that emerges from the French Revolution is a more secular state. Whereas before the French Revolution, the church had an official role in the government and a lot of influence there. And you had the Second Estate. So when the Estates General was called, the church had a third of the influence. And so, you know, that's not the case anymore. That Napoleon, like when, you know, I mentioned the Concordat with Napoleon, and Napoleon, what he did was he declared Catholicism the religion, the majority religion of France, you know, and really that means very little. Now, I think it had some ceremonial functions, but if you think about it like today, Christianity is the majority religion in the United States. It doesn't necessarily have a role in influencing the government. It's just now our government doesn't even recognize that. But Napoleon's government said, you know, we're going to recognize Catholicism as the majority religion, but there will be religious toleration. So that's another thing, that the France that emerges from the chaos of the French Revolution does not recognize hereditary nobility, and it does not recognize a formal role for the church, you know, in governance, and it allows religious toleration. Anything else, Paul, that you can think of as far as the Enlightenment impacting the French Revolution?
Well, I think that that it impacts it in lots of different ways, but at different times. I mean, you know, the French Revolution is so hard to get a grasp of because at times it is very rational. You know, as odd as it might sound, Robespierre's creation of sort of the Republic of Virtue is in some ways the ultimate epitome, or at least the attempt at the ultimate epitome of rational thought and enlightenment. But it also pointed out the problems with rational thought and the Enlightenment, and it's interesting that the Romantic period is going to like sort of take hold as the French Revolution gets worse and worse, because there's the realization that as much as rationality might be able to rationalize away the existence of a God, that it's okay to take Notre Dame Cathedral and turn it into a temple of reason. It's okay to take down saint names off of churches. It's okay to change the calendar and get rid of religious holidays and have, you know, a celebration of reason and rationality at the end of every year, where all these things make sense. What they don't take into account is the tradition and the long-held, deep-rooted beliefs of the people themselves. And ultimately, rationality comes into conflict with people who've been told their entire lives that if they want eternal life, the church is the way to that salvation. And to turn their back on it means an eternity in hell. And so you have a rational group of people who are trying to rationalize everything. And then you have people who are saying, like, I get where you're coming from, but I don't want to burn for like the rest of eternity. So, you know, I don't know that I'm on board with this so much. So there are periods of rationality and there are periods of irrationality. There are periods of enlightenment and there are periods of romanticism. And the French Revolution is just so scattered and so difficult to get a grasp on as like a thing that I think it fits into all the categories, and none of them at the same time. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. I just came up with that.
Yeah. All right. So 187 viewers right now. We're killing it. We're killing it. All right. So let's see. As far as that goes, I'm getting some questions about like Karl Marx and Lenin and the NEP. We're kind of limiting things to 1815. So we're looking, this is focused on the first half of the content. Now, Anna from CCHS, one of Miss Snyder's scholars. All right. Culver City High School, much love for Culver City High School, the home of AP Euro memes, where that was originally founded. So Anna, as far as that, how is it likely that new monarchs will have to be compared on SAQs? I always caution people against trying to anticipate what's going to be on the test, because really you need to know how to do a DBQ. Okay. You don't need to know what's going to be on the DBQ. You need to know how to do it. You don't need to know what's going to be on the SAQ. You need to know how to answer an SAQ. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, I always caution against trying to game the test that way. If you're going to game the test, learn how the test works. You know, look up some SAQs, and if you can find any, you know, we teachers have a hard time finding resources for this new exam. But as far as that goes, find some SAQs and start learning the format. You know, think about what kind of questions are you going to be asked and that sort of thing. Now, as far as the new monarchs, you know, my friend Paul Sargent, who's right here, I mean, if you look up the new monarchs, I don't have a video on this as of yet, but now, Paul, I hope I'm not about to embarrass myself. I am a historian, so I think I've got a pretty good memory, but I'm pretty sure that I've seen that that Paul Sargent, yes. If you put in new monarchs, the new monarchies, AP Euro bit by bit number 9. And remember, please do yourself a favor and subscribe to Paul Sargent's channel if you haven't already. All right. So the new monarchies, AP Euro bit by bit number 9. And the thing is, the best thing to do is that we could agree that the new monarchs could be assessed on your AP Euro exam. So you want to know about the new monarchs and, you know as much as you can about them and, be ready for whatever comes up. So I would say that, Paul Sargent just became your best friend just now. That just happened because you're going to go watch that video. All right, let's see. So we've got a few things. We've already addressed women's rights and all of that kind of stuff. Will there be a lot about the beginning of the colonization of the Americas? Now, this would go into the age of exploration, and there's some stuff here. And, while if I were designing this course for myself, I would think, whoa, that's more like U.S. history or something. It's like, I think Bartolomé de las Casas shows up in the, in the curriculum outline. If I'm not mistaken, or else like he's, there's been an exam question or something before, as far as that goes. But there is some emphasis on that because they are making an effort to make European history appear more global and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just the, history of white people or whatever. Now, as far as that goes, Paul, what would you say as far as the most important things to know about the beginning of the colonization of the Americas?
Well, I think there are two big stories that you need to understand here. One is sort of the progression of colonization in this early period. You want to understand that the Portuguese kind of get the ball rolling by moving down the African coast. The Spanish go and very famously in 1492 start their explorations out with Christopher Columbus. And they start to establish these very large empires. They are very successful at taking over. The Spanish, more so than the Portuguese, are very good at taking over vast areas, trashing entire empires with very few people. And then along come the British and the French and the Dutch, who are more organized. They have stronger states and stronger navies, and in some cases are even run by private companies. And they actually drive out the Portuguese, and they go into sort of a second phase of colonization where they take over a lot of the Portuguese possessions. They set up their own colonies, mostly in North America. And you want to know the impact of all of this on the peoples that are being colonized as well. We have the slave trade that comes out of this. We have the Columbian exchange that comes out of this with the triangular trade of goods that comes out of this, and then of course the decimation of native populations by the diseases that are brought mostly unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, by the European conquerors. And so I think if you understand sort of the progression of nations, the beginning with the Spanish and the Portuguese, and then moving on to these larger nations that England, France, the Dutch, as colonizers, I think that's one story. And then I think the story of the interchange between cultures, the good and the bad, I think is the other story that you need to know.
All right. And, just going over to Instagram, let me go ahead and answer a question a little bit here. Daisy Soto has a question here. One of my Instagram followers at Tom Richey, just like on Twitter. And, Daisy Soto asked, can I go over absolutism? Now, of course, as far as that goes, I've got lots of videos in absolutism. And what I would do is I would start off with my first video on that subject, which is called Foundations of Absolutism. I think that what is important is to put together what all of these absolute monarchs are trying to do. So if you're going to evaluate absolute monarchs had to, just similar to, I recommended Paul's video on the new monarchs, that they have to continue the dismantling of the power structures that support the nobility and the church. Okay, so these are two institutional power structures that, you know, basically keep kings from being powerful and keep kings from being able to, and queens from being able to centralize administration. And so you want to note that. Now, absolutists also had to undermine representative bodies, you know, which the Estates General, when that was called before the French Revolution, Louis XIV stopped calling the Estates General. It met every now and then, kind of like the British Parliament, like whenever it needed to, whenever the king needed advice or money or something else. And so Louis was like, look, I'm not going to depend on these people. So, you know, note the representative bodies, the universities, the towns, which, you know, when you think about Louis XIV's Edict of Fontainebleau, which revoked Henry IV's Edict of Nantes, which had given a limited amount of toleration to the French Huguenots in certain towns. So basically, Henry IV, after the French Wars of Religion, was making exceptions. And Louis was like, no, one king, one law, one faith. You start to see that the Prussian absolutists are starting to create an education system that answers to the state rather than an education system that answers to the church. So I think that really looking at that video where I explain this and the principles of absolutism and what the absolute monarchs were trying to do, such as Peter the Great, which you know, that's this guy here. He got a lot of Russia stuff here. I'm kind of a Russophile. This statue back here that you see during some of the videos, this is a replica of the statue in St. Petersburg of the bronze horseman, Peter the Great. All right. So one of these days, I'm going to see the real statue, get a picture of it. But until then, you know, this is yeah, this is what I've got. You know, if anybody's been taught, I don't think Mr. Prodan is actually teaching anymore. I think he might have gone into administration or something. Oh yeah, let me get that where you can see it. So, you know, basically the big ideas of absolutism, I would say, are the most important, but also familiarize yourselves with these specific policies of absolute monarchs, you know, such as Louis, such as Peter the Great's table of ranks, and, you know, how that, you know, basically undermined the power structure of the nobility and made people more accountable to the czar. So that's something. Now I think I might do a little bit of Instagram live. I've got a little gap. We're about to sign off here. So those of you that are following me on Instagram at Tom Richey, might do a little Instagram live broadcast, take a few questions, you know, or just check out this new Instagram live thing just for fun. And, you know, which, Paul, we got 8 new followers there on Instagram. Let's see who these people are. Life Lessons with Love. All right, with all underscores. Mason Bruns, Alexis Osipovs, Teo, Meredith Meeker, Risa McGraw, Julia Sizisco. Okay, yeah, gosh, I tell you what, these are not easy names. I guess they're taking up all the easy Instagram handles to pronounce. Paul, anything about absolutism before we head out for the evening?
No, you know, I think if you understand sort of the basics of what absolutist rulers were trying to do, which is really to consolidate power to the level beyond the new monarchs, and if you have a good idea of an example or two of absolute monarchs. I mean, Louis XIV is the poster child of the entire thing. And if you understand what he was able to accomplish, then I think you've got the idea of the absolute monarchs. It's important to understand that when it comes down to it, and midterms are going to be a little bit different than the AP exam itself, but with this new stimulus-based format, and with you know, just a few short answer questions and one long essay question and one DBQ, you know, there are going to be vast amounts of information that you're going to spend a lot of time worrying about that won't even show up because there are only a limited number of stimuli that can be given in a test of this length. So I think familiarizing yourself with the general ideas is a very, very important thing, and getting them in a chronological order so that you understand kind of what was happening and how it flowed and how things changed, and worrying about that over all of the specific details about every single thing, because you'll drive yourself nuts, and then you'll drive yourself even more nuts when you look at the test and half of the things that you spend a lot of time studying are not even mentioned. So get a broad-based understanding, and then use the stimuli to help you answer the questions that are being posed.
Okay, so this is I tell you what, gosh, quite an Instagram rush here. Now, also on Snapchat, I'm Tom Richey SC. I guess somebody took Tom Richey back when just the perverts were on it or whatever. So that it's a little bit more complicated, but just Tom Richey SC on Snapchat. So think about that as well. Those of you, gosh, big old rush of followers on Instagram. And shout out to Salome, who I will be tutoring sometime this weekend, but we need to work on the time. So Salome, I just happened to see you come up like during that big rush. I was like, wait, I get that name. And remember, I do offer online tutoring. So, but then again, the online tutoring is more expensive than this premium session I'm about to do. Now, Paul might drop in on that if he has time, but as far as that goes, I'm really just looking to get a group of like 10 to 20 people, a smaller group where it's just more like a tutoring session. You see a lot's going on these big live sessions. So, I'm taking a little break, maybe get a little Instagram live, maybe put something on Snapchat. Again, Tom Richey SC. So, be sure to stay in touch and all of that kind of stuff. And remember, the premium session starts at 8:30. It's just $5 to buy in. I don't care if you share the link with your friends. I really don't, but the thing is, I just want to make sure everybody's questions get answered. We have a kind of smaller group, focus on maybe a handful of topics, maybe get into some of that absolutism stuff that people were asking about, go a little more in depth. But anyway, I want to thank Paul Sargent, ladies and gentlemen. And one more time, I'm going to put his channel up here on the on the screen here, because I think it's very important that you follow Paul Sargent. You follow him anywhere you can. Follow, subscribe to his YouTube channel and all of that kind of stuff. He's got a lot of great videos on AP European history, a lot of them on topics that I haven't tackled yet, and then some of them on topics where he's explaining it differently. And a lot of times, I enjoy hearing Paul's explanation of things. I watch Paul's videos. So, Paul Sargent, make sure that you are subscribing to his channel. And, we'll be doing some more of this. Also, remember my Romulus app, which is available at the App Store. Great for reviewing content. Okay. Romulus Euro. Okay. Romulus Euro at the App Store. And if you like it, if you could leave a good review, that'd be great, because there are some people out there that, will leave some unflattering reviews. And so if my friends will leave good reviews, that, that's great, because people review apps when they don't like them. They barely ever review an app when they like it. So as far as that's concerned, ladies and gentlemen, again, many thanks to Paul Sargent. I'm going to take a break, go to Instagram Live for a little bit, maybe rest my vocal cords, and I will be back at 8:30. For those of you, I've got a link to sign up for the premium session if you want to join us. And if not, best of luck on your exam. Be sure to watch my videos, Paul's videos. We provide a lot of stuff for free. So, take advantage of that stuff too. So thank you so much and have a wonderful night. It's always a pleasure.